Over the next 2 weeks, if you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes because it's likely to change. We are looking at a very active pattern to start our March next at the Weather Farm. Welcome to our Wednesday forecast here at the Weather Farm. We have a very active pattern getting ready to take shape across the North American continent that will take us into our March. If you have comments and questions, go ahead and drop those down in the comments section, but we want to get the details to you as quickly as possible. As we begin our Wednesday, we are looking at an area of low pressure centered over Iowa that is sliding to the south and east. This is an Alberta clipper, but it doesn't have a lot of moisture to work with, but it will bring a chance of rain through the Ohio Valley as it slips to the mid-Atlantic for our Thursday. Up across parts of Saskatchewan, we do have a light amount of snow, another clipper system moving across that area. Out west, where we have been inundated with the heavy rain and snowfall the last couple of days, that's kind of gone quiet. We have a drying period that will bring generally warmer conditions to places up through Washington state. With that system that is moving, however, through the Ohio Valley, the Storm Prediction Center has issued a very marginal risk of some severe weather for our Wednesday. Primary threat here is going to be straight line winds and maybe a few rumbles of thunder and isolated hail due to the colder air that is going to be coming in behind this system. And if we take a look at that, by the time we go through Wednesday across Illinois and Indiana, it's light amount of showers. And it's really as we get toward the evening that we can see that the storms maybe fire up an occasional cell here or there, but that quickly pushes out by our Thursday morning as those blue lines, that colder air rushes in right behind that cold front. In terms of our precipitation for our Wednesday into Thursday morning, we're going to see generally up to about 1/4 of an inch across parts of Indiana and Ohio, stretching down towards Evansville. You could see near 1/2 an inch, and of course eastern Kentucky, where you have been devastated by the heavy amounts of rain, then heavy snow, you're going to see an additional 1/4 of an inch of rain for our Wednesday. In terms of snowfall across the Great Lakes, again, I mentioned there's not a lot of moisture for this particular system to work with, so we're going to see light amounts, maybe a coating to 1/2 an inch. And so as we go to our Thursday, we see that area of low pressure continues to move off to the east, bringing snow to Ontario and snow out ahead of it. Rain from Pennsylvania and New York all the way down through eastern Tennessee. But out west, look through British Columbia, we see yet another atmospheric river. Heavy rain along the coast, heavy mountain snows, and it is that system that is going to join with that low pressure system centered over northern Alberta, and it's going to be very impactful as it makes its way across North America over the next 72 hours. The rest of the country is pretty quiet. We have exceptional heat across the southwest. Temperatures are going to be pushing 90 to 95 in the deserts of California and southwestern Arizona and northern Mexico. We're going to see excessive warmth up through Nebraska and Kansas, temperatures reaching near the 60s and 70s, but that is going to be short-lived as we're seeing that trough begin to dig across the Ohio Valley down towards the Tennessee Valley. It's going to help shift that air, that warmer air, a little bit further west for this upcoming weekend and allow some colder temperatures to filter to the eastern half of the United States. But with that rainfall that's moving through, the Storm Prediction Center has also highlighted North Carolina, Southern Virginia, and South Carolina for a chance of severe weather for our Thursday. Kind of like what we saw through the Ohio Valley on Wednesday, there's not a lot of energy for this system to work with. There may be a rumble or two of thunder, maybe some isolated hail, some strong winds, but nothing that we're overly concerned with at this point. The rainfall amounts are going to be very small, maybe 1/4 of an inch along the coast through North Carolina and South Carolina, but this is just not a rainmaker. The big impact with this cold front moving through is going to be the colder weather that comes behind it. But across the Northeast, where we do have that colder air already in place, there is going to be enough moisture drawing off the Atlantic with that area of low pressure and that counterclockwise rotation. And we could see 4 to 7 inches of snow across northern New York into Vermont, New Hampshire, and to parts of Maine. We get up into Ontario and Quebec, we could see slightly higher amounts. But this is only a precursor to what we're going to see. That Clipper system, as it slides through Alberta into Saskatchewan and Manitoba Thursday to our Friday morning, it is going to lay down a significant swath of snow across the Canadian provinces. From places in northern Alberta like Jackknife or Jackfish River, down through La Ronge in Saskatchewan, down toward Winnipeg, Manitoba, we could see widespread 15 to 25 centimeters of snow, isolated amounts in excess of 30 centimeters of snow, especially parts of southwestern Manitoba by the time we get to Monday or Friday morning. This snow is going to continue to spread into northern Minnesota, through Michigan, and into the northeast. And so we see that system there centered over northern Minnesota, and it's really building up its intensity. It is deepened from a 1,007 millibar low that we saw on our Friday, 1,004, excuse me. It is now deep into a 991 millibar low, and with those tight pressure lines, we're going to have a wind field with this particular system as well. And it's going to continue to dump heavy snow across the arrowhead of Minnesota, through the UP of Michigan, making its way into Ontario. By the time we get to Saturday morning, that system continues to move to the east. We're going to see widespread 8 to 12 inches of snow across the UP of Michigan and northern Michigan, making its way over towards Toronto, where we could see 10 to 15 inches of snow. And that system is going to continue to slide into the northeast for our Saturday into early Sunday morning, and that widespread snow. And this map takes us through Sunday morning. So we are already seeing an additional 5 to 7 inches of snow across places that just received snow for our Thursday into Friday. So it is going to be a definitely snowy area across the Canadian provinces into the northeast over the next 72 hours. But until then, enjoy the warm weather. From our anomaly map, temperatures 15 to 20 degrees above normal for most of the country, but we can see that colder air beginning to dive south and east as we get towards the weekend. The eastern half of the United States, east of the Mississippi, you're going to be 10 to 15, 30 degrees below normal as we get toward the northeast. Whereas in the desert southwest, it can be exceptionally warm, 10 to 15 degrees above seasonal norms. And that warmth is going to spread into the Dakotas, through Minnesota, up into British Columbia, even into southwestern Alberta, 15 to 20 degrees above seasonal norms. And in terms of actual temperatures, we're going to see the core of the cold descend out over Hudson Bay by the time we get to our Thursday. But before that, widespread warmth across the lower 48. But we can see as we get to Thursday morning, temperatures approaching 30 to 35 below zero just south and west of Hudson Bay. Whereas along the Gulf Coast, you're in the 70s and 80s as we make our way into Thursday. In the desert southwest, you're in the 80s and 90s. But here comes that cold on Friday morning, now spreading east into Quebec, 35, 40 degrees below zero. By Saturday, that we really start to see that intrusion of that colder air into the eastern half of the United States. So places in the arrowhead of Minnesota, you may not get above zero on our Saturday. And the 20s and 30s return to the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, where you've been in the 60s and 70s. This time last week, we were at 56% of the United States was covered by snow. At this point in time, we're only at 22% of the United States covered by snow. So as that system makes its way across the Canadian prairies, through the upper Great Lakes and into the northeast, that's going to help increase the snow depth, which is going to help that colder air sink a little bit further south as it comes south of Hudson Bay. And it's going to provide a snowpack that for future shots of colder air in the long range, which we've been hinting at for a few days now, it's going to help that those temperatures remain colder than normal as we go into the extended period. That's one of the things that we've been watching here at the Weather Farm. Winter isn't giving up. You know, spring's at the door, ready to take the keys, but winter's saying, nope, not yet. You know, I still have some fight left in me. And I believe as we move into our March, we are going to see a very active pattern. Think about what happened right before Valentine's Day, those middle 2 weeks of February, where we saw several storms moving across the United States in about a 2 to 3 day interval. And so I'm going to show you this next series of maps, and it's a little fast in its looping, but it shows you a general pattern. Don't get caught up on the idea of where a particular system is going, whether your particular location is showing snow or rain or what it's showing. Look at the progression of the storms, and it's something that we've been monitoring here over the last several days. Where's the general track been? We showed in our video on Monday. If you need to, go back and click on it up above. We talked about a general pattern change around the 3rd through the 6th of March. We saw that the models were beginning to hone in and come into some kind of consensus about something across the Central Plains. And we're still seeing that. The models are still pretty consistent. Now, they've wobbled up and down a little bit with their track. Some have gone colder, some have gone a little warmer. So those are details that we're going to continue to iron out. But let's go ahead and just look at this. This is our start of our map. There's that system exiting out of the northeast. But look out west. We have one system making its way on shore. It moves across the United States. Another one, about 2 days later, makes its way on shore. And another that moves through the Rockies and through the Central Plains. Another atmospheric river hits around the 8th and the 9th. Another one around the 11th, another one around the 13th. All of these systems, as they impact the West Coast with atmospheric rivers of heavy rain and snow, they make their way through the Rockies and then through the Central Plains, and then that's where the path kind of isn't as certain. Will they go more farther to the north and east? Will they continue to migrate east? Where will the exact patterns line up? A lot of that is going to have to do with the amount of Arctic air and the troughing at the 500 millibar level that exists in certain parts of the country. But what we are generally seeing, and we go to the Arctic or the Pacific North American pattern, we're in a pattern right now where it's PNA positive. When PNA goes negative, and we think it's going to around that 3rd through the 6th of March time period that we've been talking about. So when we start to see this PNA pattern start to shift negative, we start to see that troughiness in the west. And that's what's going to allow those atmospheric rivers to continue to go a little bit further south than Washington and Oregon, more California area. We're going to see some ridging in the east that's going to be short-lived, because as those troughs move from west to east, that ridge is going to be quickly replaced by a trough of colder weather. And we're going to see a very active storm track over the United States during that 2-week period to begin our March. Is everything locked in stone? No. Could things change? Yes. But we do see PNA going negative and staying negative for at least a couple weeks into March. Where that ridging occurs in the east ahead of a trough, we could see severe weather outbreaks from the Central Plains through the southeast, even up into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys during this 2-week time frame. And it could be followed in a day or two by cold and snowy weather. So we're just going to continue to monitor those details. We hope you've enjoyed your Wednesday forecast. Again, ask your questions in the comments section. Go ahead and drop those down there. Let us know the things you are wondering about as we transition to March, as we end our February, the end of meteorological winter. Technically, March 1st is the beginning of meteorological spring. So, you know, as they say back home, you know, the corn husk were right, that winter's just not done yet. So what do you think about it? Do you think winter's had its last call, or do you think there's still 1 or 2 more punches left for Old Man Winter? We'll see you again real soon.